Hello guys, and welcome to the video. Today we are going to be comparing a $500 Hamilton watch from Hamilton with the $1,000 diver from Christopher Ward. Now, there seems to be a lot of debate in the community on whether or not an increase in what you spend on a watch actually makes any difference in terms of the quality of the watch. So I am going to make this video for you to kind of sum everything up and kind of explain the differences between these two watches. So let us hop right on into it. I'll see you guys in just a second. Alright guys, so here is the close-up shot of both of these watches. Here we have the $500 Hamilton Khaki Navy Scuba. Wow, that is a long name. And over here we have the Christopher Ward Trident Pro C60 600 meters, which is water resistant to 600 meters. So, immediately picking up the watches, it is kind of hard to tell which one would cost more just on a quick glance. The Christopher Ward is a little bit more heavy, and I think that has to do with the overall solid feeling of the bracelet. I think the bracelet on the Christopher Ward probably weighs a little bit more. So one thing that I pretty much immediately noticed in terms of the differences between these watches is the bezel. So there are a few things that are different about the bezel. The Hamilton bezel only clicks once every minute. So I don't know if you guys can see this here, but it clicks. It has 60 clicks as it goes all the way across, and it's unidirectional, right? The Christopher Ward, which is twice the price of the Hamilton, has double the clicks per minute. So there are 2 clicks per minute, or 120, excuse me, it's a little hard to wind, or to move the bezel. Has 120 clicks per hour, and I totally missed. So that is one dead giveaway on the bezel. Obviously, if you're setting your dive bezel, you want it to be completely accurate. So the Christopher Ward has 120 clicks around the 120 positions so that it can be more accurate when you're timing your dive. The Hamilton, on the other hand, just clicks into the minute position, so it isn't as accurate if you are actually using the timing function of the bezel. But I mean, let's be honest here guys, no one uses the timing function on the bezel. Another difference that is pretty evident with the bezels is that the bezel on the Hamilton doesn't actually have engraved numbers like the Christopher Ward does. And it's a little hard to see on the Christopher Ward, but if you actually could feel it, the numbers are actually engraved into the bezel along with these tick marks. And the Christopher Ward has a little loom pip at the 12 o'clock position when the bezel is properly put on the watch. The Hamilton, on the other hand, just has a steel bezel that is ion plated. And so all of these little ticks and or the numbers is just where they did not coat the underlying steel. And they probably did a nice polishing job underneath here, but that's kind of a giveaway. Again, this is a steel bezel, whereas the Christopher Ward is actually a ceramic bezel, and that's how they were able to engrave the numbers in this watch. Now, some people who don't like ceramic bezels would say, oh, well, you know, ceramic bezels are the devil because if you drop them, they'll shatter, whereas if you drop a metal bezel, it'll just dent. And that is true, but these are really expensive watches. So my stance on it is don't drop your watch. So I think the way that I'm going to organize this comparison is I'm actually going to go from the outside in. So next we're going to look at the case and the finishing. The finishing on the Hamilton is pretty much what you would expect from a Swiss piece. I have seen a few Hamiltons that are actually better polished and brushed than this piece, but I think it is just brushed mostly to keep the aesthetic of the watch. Another thing on here, this watch has pretty big crown guards, has a nice signed crown, but these crown guards actually make it really hard not to unscrew the crown and wind it. This is actually pretty easy, but you have to push it back in as you're screwing, and it's kind of hard to do, especially when it is on your wrist. Now, the Christopher Ward's crown guards are a little bit smaller, and the crown, I would say, protrudes more. So it's very, very easy to unscrew, wind, and push back. Now, the winding action on the Christopher Ward is actually a little bit harder. There's more friction on the inside when you're trying to wind the watch on the Christopher Ward, and on the Hamilton it doesn't have that. I think this is actually due to the water protection that they put in the crown mechanism on the Christopher Ward, because both of these watches have the exact same movement. So let us move on to the bracelet. The Hamilton's bracelet is actually really, really nice, especially for the $500 price point. It's mostly brushed, right? But it actually has some little accents on the side here on the center link, and the center link is slightly raised. So that's a nice feature. The clasp, you just push in and it comes undone. Very, very nice. It's stamped steel, or not stamped, but it's steel, which is very nice. And it feels okay. There's a little bit of play in the bracelet. It doesn't feel as high quality as the Christopher Ward, though. The Christopher Ward tapers slightly. If you guys see all these scratches on here, I do apologize. This is my pretty much daily wear, and I do not baby this watch at all. I think that does actually speak to the toolness of this watch a little bit more. So the bracelet is a little bit scratched here, but it does taper slightly. And I think overall it has a little bit less play, although it is hard to tell because this is sized to my wrist and this one is not. The Christopher Ward has their little signage on the little buckle, and if we undo it, again, it looks pretty nice, just like the Hamilton. The one thing I would say is when you are closing this actually like really clicks into place, whereas the Hamilton, it does click, but it is a little bit softer and it doesn't feel as secure. My girlfriend, if you guys have seen my video on which watches attract females or something like that, she actually said this one like clicks and this one like clicks. She's not a Valley girl, thank God. But she did say that. And I think it's a very accurate description. Alright guys, I do apologize for the sirens in this video. Looking at the back of the Christopher Ward, we can see the Trident Pro and the Trident kind of stamped into the solid stainless steel case back, which is actually screwed in, or like the lid is screwed on here, and you need a special tool to take it off. But honestly, I wouldn't want to take it off because it would probably mess with the water resistance of this watch. The Christopher Ward is water resistant to 600 meters, whereas the Hamilton is water resistant to 100 meters. Now, the Hamilton has something very interesting for a dive watch, and if you have been paying attention in this video, you've seen it before, they actually proudly display the movement, which I believe is the H31, which, to be completely honest, is basically an ETA 2824-2 that Hamilton says that they've modified, but to be honest, it looks really, really similar. The only thing they did was decorate the rotor here. So yeah, it looks pretty good down in there. But it does make me a little bit confused as to the purpose of this watch. It has the unidirectional rotating bezel, but it has a display back case, which is not something that you would necessarily find on a diving watch. Now, some people really like the exhibition case back or the display back case, but to be completely honest, like if this is a diving watch, I don't necessarily think it should have it. So that brings up the next point in this video. A really big difference between these two watches, and this is kind of a personal kind of styling and taste criticism I have for the Hamilton, and you guys can feel free to disagree with me, tell me how much of an idiot I'm being in the comments down below. But the Christopher Ward is fairly uniform. It knows what it's doing. Kind of all across the board. It knows that it's a diver, and it's kind of optimized for that. You can kind of see on the dial, which I'm going to get to a little bit later, it has kind of the wave pattern on the dial. Again, I am not looking through the camera, so I can't really tell if you guys are able to see that. But it does have the wave pattern on the dial. It's not solid black. And if you look at the back of the second hand, you can actually see, let me bring it closer to the camera, geez. You can actually see the Trident on the second hand, which I think is a really interesting touch. Now again, we don't have the exhibition case back, but we do have a diver's extension, which I actually forgot to mention. So this watch is very elegant, very refined, but it is meant for diving. It has just the very readable white applied indices on the black dial. It has the loom on the actual countdown timer on the bezel, whereas the Hamilton has more functionality. Whereas the Christopher Ward only has a date, and the Hamilton also has a day at the 12 o'clock position. Let me bring this up closer so you can see it. The Hamilton, I think, in my opinion, and there will be a formal review of the Hamilton coming to the channel soon, so if you want to see that, subscribe. The Hamilton tries to do too many things at once. This is part of the khaki line from Hamilton, which kind of has their field watches. So it does have the 1 to 12 on the outer ring of the dial, and it does have the military time on the inner ring. One really cool feature that kind of stood out to me is the red arrows both on the top and the bottom of the day and at the bottom of the date. I actually think this is optimal placement for the date window. And another cool thing that I really like about the watch is the loom tipped kind of arrow second hand. And after seeing this, I do want a watch with an arrow head second hand. But I don't think it's going to be this watch. This watch confuses me, honestly. It kind of sends a mixed metaphor, whereas the numbering and the finishing on the dial and kind of the hand styling really indicate kind of a precision kind of field watch, you know, something you would wear in the trenches of World War II. The bezel and, I don't know, the crown guards and the crown all suggest a diving watch. Whereas the Christopher Ward sends a very clear and very refined message, I am a diver, don't wear me in World War II. Honestly, it's up to you which watch and which style you prefer, but I think the Hamilton sends a mixed message, and I don't think that that would happen at the higher price points. I think the other Hamilton watches that I've seen at $1,000 are kind of dedicated to one thing, whereas this kind of combines the elements of a field watch with a diver. And if you like that sort of thing, this is probably the watch for you. If you like kind of the more refined sense that the Christopher Ward gives off, then the Christopher Ward is for you. But I just wanted to make this video because this kind of shows you in the sub $1,000 price categories where the watch manufacturers start to cut corners. I think, just to quickly summarize, a real quick thing to tell is the bezel. The bezel on the Christopher Ward is, I would say, measurably better than the bezel on the Hamilton, whereas the Hamilton has the more features, right? I would also say that the placement of the day actually, I think, is a little bit better. I think it's a little bit more elegantly framed on the Christopher Ward than on the Hamilton. I would also say the dial kind of design is better on the Christopher Ward. It does have that wave pattern on the dial, which is hard to do when you are trying to save money. Obviously, with any other video on YouTube, I would be an idiot if I didn't mention the corners that were cut on the bracelet. Now, again, as I said, this bracelet on the Christopher Ward has been worn quite a bit, but I do think that it is of higher quality. The pushers are nice, it clicks. Oh my gosh, it clicks in. And the Hamilton, it also clicks in, but it's not as sturdy. I think it's also just a bit too wide. It doesn't taper. It feels a little bit metallic-y, whereas, and kind of like pebbly. I don't know how to describe it properly, but the Christopher Ward feels a little bit more solid, and it actually weighs a little bit more. So that pretty much sums up the differences between these watches. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for more content like this, and if you would like to support the channel, follow the links in the description down below to support me on Patreon. I will see you all next time. It's been real. Thanks for watching. Bye.